Hello again, loved ones. This is Matt Stevens, and I hope that you are doing super fantastic. I'm doing pretty well myself, and I have been kind of getting off into I don't want to say conspiracy theory side of things because it's deeper than that. But I mean, we can go there. We can call it that. That's fine. But I often refer to Maya, which is Hindu and or Buddhist word for the illusion, which is the I've got a gnat. Jeez, Maya, which is the Vedic, ancient Vedic word for the illusion of this physical realm, this physical life, and this Maya could be equated to like a VR, as if like the book I'm reading currently is Quantum Spirituality by Peter Canova, and it's very good. It's about Gnosticism. However, he refers to it, and I'll just read from it. Actually, I've got it right here. This is the book, Quantum Spirituality by Peter Canova, and in one part of it, he says, "This is where the illusion comes in, otherwise known as Maya." It says you could say that we ran a software program that created a virtual reality necessary to delude ourselves into believing we are separate physical beings in a world of solid objects. Now we're prisoners, believing in our own program. The Archon is like Agent Smith in the Matrix movies. Smith was a program that went wild and assumed a type of reality that came to control and affect the very computer network he was created to serve. Now, that is very good. That's why I read that. But it is, again, from Quantum Spirit. That dang gnat. Jeez. Hey, there it goes. Keep going. So, anyway, dear loved one, while we're on the subject, because we're not, would you please go ahead and hit the like button? I would appreciate that. And subscribe to this channel. That'd be fantastic, too. So, in theory, we created a reality. We created this construct and made it so believable that we have now just gotten lost in it. That's why I say when people say that we have lost our way, we forgot who we are, forgot where we came from, all of that. That means that we have gotten so wrapped up in this physical reality that we can't imagine it not being this. But then I'm reminded of the various states that we can be in. For example, when we're in the dream state, everything seems so real. But when we wake from that dream and we look back on it, we think, gosh, that was very weird. That was a very strange landscape or circumstances or whatever the case may be. But it seemed very strange compared to this. Now, I also got to believe once we jack out of this realm, this physical reality, we will look back on this and think, wow, that was weird, right? This will seem very strange then, but right now it seems it's what we consider to be real because it's what we are currently perceiving. It's what we're currently immersed in. So he says we're now prisoners in our own virtual reality. And now I'm not necessarily saying it's a computer program. I kind of believe it is, but I believe it's a computer program that we created on the outside. And that would just add another layer of depth to reality. Because one theory, and I do believe this is I'm not saying this is necessarily the one I go with, but it's good. I do believe that we created this so that we can awaken faster, so that we can, by virtue of time dilation, we can rapidly live through cycles, rapidly live through lifetimes, and gain more insight faster than we would at a slower pace on the outside. But regardless of that, that is definitely one theory. Some people believe that we created this so that we can find our way out of the one out there. So if we find our way out of this one, we're like, okay, well, that's how we do it. So then on the outside, when we jack out of here, now we know how to get out of that one. So as I said, it's just another layer among all the layers. Now, when we peel everything all the way back to the very beginning, we get back to the source, or God, the universal consciousness, who had the I am moment, the big I exist, its own awakening, and it realized I do exist, I am. And then when that happened, it began creating in its infinite imagination, and it created, well, as the Gnostics believe, it created the aeons, which we would call the angels. But there you go. And then some of them, like for example, Sophia, went off on her own, off into the quantum realm, off into the chaos, which would be the leftover, what the universal consciousness, what the source did not use in the creation of that original I am moment. And in that, Sophia began creating. She created what we would consider the ether. Now, see, so it goes many, many layers, and I don't know how many layers could it go. It could go. I mean, it's impossible to tell. That's all I know about that, dear loved one. But what we do know, though, is that this world where we live, everything is on a very negative trajectory. If we just let our minds go, if we just go with the flow of everything, we find ourselves on a very negative path. It's not like a nosedive, of course, because then that would be rejected by humanity. But it is definitely on a downward tilt. Let's put it that way. And we have to ask ourselves, why? Well, if we dig into Gnosticism a little more, we find the demiurge and we find the archons. And they are the negative beings that rule over this world, that have penetrated and rule this world. The demiurge believes that it is God. The demiurge believes it is the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful God. Now, in this realm, it is. And before any of you Christians get, all wadded up over what I just said, remember, Jesus did say to beware the God of this world. So there's that. Further, he said that God resides in heaven. And he went even further and said that you're not going to find the kingdom of heaven here or there or anywhere. The only place you're going to find the kingdom of heaven is within you. So if the original source, the universal mind, God, resides in heaven, and that heaven is inside you, that's where it is. But now the God of this world, this construct, that's a different one. That's the demiurge. And there's a lot of controversy over that because of the Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament and stuff. I'm not going to get into that right now. Some of you probably know what I'm talking about. Others may not. We will get into that, but that's not going to be a 10 to 15 minute video. That's going to be something that's got to take a lot more. It's going to take a lot more. Let's just put it that way. So, but the demiurge is a God that thinks it is the ultimate God. And there are those in the world, the elites of the world, who understand this hierarchy. And they perpetuate the fear and just fear, anxiety, guilt, worry, all of the negative emotions that we are constantly bombarded with. When we are in those negative states, we produce that low frequency vibration, that low frequency energy that we emit, known as Loosh. Now, it's speculated and theorized, I suppose, that there are certain stations around the world that kind of gather this Loosh. And that's something very compelling also. However, the Loosh is said to be used by the archons, as the demiurge, as a form of sustenance. I'll give you an example of how that worked out, like say in the medieval times when sacrifice was more accepted. The actual sacrifice of the victim itself, that was not the actual offering to the gods. The emotion, the sheer terror and fear and all of the anxiety and all of that produced by the victim. And it was, if you realize it, it was always, these sacrifices were always done in some very ritualistic, just very messed up kind of way, in a way that would spark a lot of fear and terror in the victim. That energy produced by the victim, that was the actual offering. That was what was given to the gods, was that loosh that was let off by the victim during that ritual. Now we look at the news media, we look at entertainment, we look at all of these things that we in the world. They are constantly putting in your face fear, anxiety, worry, fear, anxiety, worry. Constantly, humanity are being bombarded with constant, just in the news media and in entertainment, all these things that will spark anxiety and fear in us. That is the elites of the world's way of appeasing the gods, keeping us in states of low vibrational, where we are emitting that low vibrational energy, loosh, in mass quantities. Now most people in the world emit it. Why? That is the elites who know the way things are going. The elites of the world who are, I guess, they're hip to the game. Let's put it that way. They're hip to the game, and that is how they earn favor with these evil entities. It's said that they don't really necessarily know that they're evil, but I got a feeling by now you guys probably figured it out, but so there's that. So whenever I talk about this construct, I do kind of believe that maybe this one is a program that we have then inserted ourselves into so that we can awaken faster, we can become aware faster. But there's also so that we can't contaminate the outside world. That's also another thing. There's so many theories that make a lot of sense, and they all and most of them do tie together somehow. This could be a multiple purpose thing. So, anyway, dear loved ones, yes, that only thing I can suggest is to turn off the news. First of all, focus on focus on getting your vibration up. Focus on rising above fear and anxiety. That way, you won't be feeding the system. That way, you will not be feeding the negative entities that have permeated this realm, permeated this construct. And if you are not feeding them, well, then you're not going to be of any use. So maybe you can be ejected out of here and then move on to something bigger and better. That part, how could we know? But we do know that there must be a breaking point. There are so many more people waking up. The rate at which humanity are having this awakening, there are more and more people every day who are beginning to wake up. And the ones that are waking up at a much faster rate. That's why I say that spiritual awakening has begun to have a quickening effect. So, which tells me that everything's coming to a head. Something is about to happen. And I haven't even mentioned resets yet. It would be necessary to install resets at certain points in the program so that things don't get too far out of hand, so that everything gets reset back to zero. If you read the book of Genesis, for example, as a reset event, it makes more sense. For example, God hovered over the waters. It's like, over the waters? What waters? This was before he created anything. Just one random thought there. So anyway, that's not just one. I mean, obviously, there's lots of evidence all over the world of resets, from buildings and structures being sunk below the surface of the earth, not just water, but also under the dirt. So, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one off here now. But I encourage you to really focus on your awakening. Tune into your higher self. Put out the signal to your higher self. Hey, I'm waking up and I need your guidance. I'm going to be on the lookout for the synchronicities. I'm going to be listening to my intuition. Show me the way. that's your higher self, and your higher self is definitely trying to guide us. I think that this quickening effect is probably if our higher selves shaking us awake, saying, hey, something's about to happen. And it's time to get busy, get down to the figuring out what you came here to figure out. So anyway, loved ones, I hope that was interesting for you. I've got a lot more to go with this, so stick with me. Please subscribe, and we will do that. And yeah, some live streams are going to definitely in the works. That's got to happen because it will be it's just necessary for these kinds of topics for live stream, I believe. But yes, please give me a like on this video if you would. And in the comments, I will solicit comments shamelessly, yes. but let me know what your theories are. Is this construct? Is this something that we've made so that maybe we can figure out how to get out of the one out there? Or is this something that we made, or is it not? Is this what we would consider to be prime reality? What are your thoughts on that? But anyway, loved ones, that's what I got for you. I do love you. I do. And I'll be back directly.